still early days of the internet. I mean, YouTube didn't exist. There was no social media at the time. There was, I don't think Google was actually in existence yet. So you couldn't just, what did you say?
Ask Jeeves.
Ask Jeeves, exactly, Alta Vista. But you couldn't really like take a casual dive deeply into, or a quick dive deeply into some very specific subculture, and professional show dogging, or dog showing, whatever you want to do, is very specific. How did this come about? How did you get your interest?
Thank you.
Every single question will be this complex.
I see. Well, what happened was I was walking our dog. My wife is here, and we had a dog at the time. We had a dog, a rescue dog, and I was walking the dog in a dog park, and there was a woman who saw me walking this dog, and she came up to me and she said, without exaggeration, said it this way, "Oh, what's that?" I said, "It's our dog. It's just Henry, it's our dog." Oh. And the look was, "I'm so sorry for you." And she had a purebred dog. And I walked away from that thinking, this is really deep. This is very seriously sad, because our dog, this great dog, was just a, mutt, basically. And I began to think about that. And so I called Eugene Levy, my writing partner, and I said, "I have this idea for doing this movie about a dog show." And he said, "No." Why? Well, we talked about it quite a bit, and eventually we did do this, but he initially didn't think it was, and it's an odd idea, to do a thing about a dog show. We went to a lot of dog shows over a period of about a year, including the Westminster, the real big one, and that's the basis of...
Did you have a good time at the dog shows? Some people love going to dog shows.
Well, I love animals. It was nice seeing the animals. The intensity is difficult backstage, as all of these people can attest to, because it's so competitive that it's not just fun people with their dogs. This is seriously.
I know it's professional.
This is, well, it's more than professional. It's yeah.
It's spiritual? What's beyond professional?
No. Well, we all spent time talking to people who did this, who were either groomers or people, and someone told me that backstage, where they're grooming them and blowing hair, that a person came along with a clipper and just went walked past a dog right before they went out. What? The end, that dog cannot be shown for then a year or whatever. That's how brutal that was. They would come and clip huge segments out of the fur and do things like that. That's how vicious it was.
Did you think about putting that in the movie?
I thought about it, but I thought, no, but it's too much, and it was horrible, and it's, no.
Did you know, like, immediately who you want, with the cast you wanted to work with for this?
Well, I did a few movies before using some people that were incredibly gifted, and it's a task that is not that common. These movies are improvised. There's no screenplay, so it's a different thing. And these are the great people that do this work.
Michael, let's move on to the cast here. I know this is a very specific way you do these movies. Not everybody has worked with this process before. There's outlining of what the story is, right?
Yes, we spend about 6 months writing the story, the entire back history of all the characters. Every scene was broken down into several pieces. Everyone knew exactly what to do when, but no dialogue was written.
So tell me, for the actors, anyway, this is jump ball here. What's it like on day one of showing up for a Christopher Guest movie?
No, that's too dim a memory for me. I've been showing 57 years with this guy, so, it's...
Going back 57 years, is it?
I'm afraid so.
Yes, Michael and I started writing songs together 57 years ago, and what we would do, not knowing what we were doing, as you really saw in this movie, we would start talking, and we wouldn't stop talking, and apparently we amused each other to some extent, and I thought this was a good way of working, and when we did This Is Spinal Tap, it was done in that fashion. And created a format to do this kind of work. And these are the most gifted people.
Well, Jane, what's it like for you? I knew you was an improviser in Chicago. Everybody in Chicago Improv was incredibly jealous when we saw you in this film. I'm almost recovered from it. But what was it like for you, day one, when you showed up?
Well, it was my first Christopher Guest movie, and I was a huge fan of Spinal Tap, and Waiting for Government made me fall out of my chair. So it was, I think Michael Higgins said once, it was a preposterous fantasy that we got to do this, and I have been quoting you for years. So the first day, Jennifer Coolidge was also, it was her first time. She was nervous, and I was nervous, and we're really grateful we had each other. We did a lot of talking about our characters and our relationship, and we walked through Stanley Park together, but none of that prepares you for when they say, Chris says action, and then the camera, you hear the camera, and it doesn't stop. It goes on and on.
There's no rehearsal, which is confusing to some people, because typically in a conventional film, obviously you rehearse the lines and you do a bunch of takes. This is trusting everything with these artists and saying action, and then we start to shoot.
John, what do you get at the beginning of the scene? Do you get like a little slip of paper saying this is your intention?
There was we had a meeting, Michael and I and Chris and Gene had a meeting like over lunch, and and Gene and Chris sort of described what was in store for what he needed from us.
We met Sandra Bullock that day, remember?
Yes.
Sandra Bullock came by the table.
That's right, Sandra Bullock was there.
I was impressed by you too, but Sandra Bullock.
So there was some understanding. I mean, it is very much like James described, though. It's a cold bath that first day, and it can remain a cold bath for a full week. It's a little. If you're done a normal movie, as Chris was saying, there's rehearsal. There's all these things that happen. It's sort of a standard procession of events. And here we get in there. I remember specifically the lobby of the hotel where the director, Roberto, I guess, the director of photography says, okay, don't go near this fern, no light, stay over there, don't get that far. Chris is like, okay, let's roll. And we're like, and and again, it's Jane. And this was when this film. You know, that's what's rolling through it's money.
Super 16.
Hear the money rolling in the pockets, yeah.
And when you think, like you get to a point where it's kind of a natural end and you're done and you're spent, and so you start repeating yourself. But what I noticed that what Chris does in the editing booth is that he'll take those moments where the actor is maybe, and he'll pop it somewhere in the scene, and it's a very wonderful kind of organic, hilarious response. You do that, right? Or am I making that up?
I do, yes. And the editing, these were shot, all the films I've done, Super 16. So there were 10-minute mags, and it reminded me of one scene we were doing. It may have been this movie. No, it may have been a different one. But Fred Willard was on one of his famous runs, and we actually ran out of film, and I said, cut, and Fred said, I'm not finished. And he wasn't. If this was shot in digital now, these would have been 45-minute takes.
I do think that this film would have been different. The performances would have been different if we knew that it was digital, that there's no end to. It's always the problems, the borders you set up for yourself that free the best material, I feel. And Chris doesn't give us a huge amount of borders, except that there's so little discussion and time that in its way is an impediment, and it brings something out of you. It just pulls this stuff out of you. And thankfully there's a lot that isn't usable. Chris takes care of that, but
Michael Hitchcock, have you met Sandra Bullock?
You know what? I have. She's very excited.
She's so nice.
I really liked her a
She's so
lot.
nice. So you had already done a Christopher Guest film.
I did Waiting for Guffman with...
Compare this to your experience with Guffman.
So that was kind of my trial by fire, and I remember on that first one, you know, there are interviews throughout those movies, and that's what the script, the outline says. It says interview. I thought, oh, Christopher will ask us questions, and that's how that works. And he just kind of went, go. And I thought, oh, go. And so, yeah, so that was, yeah, just...
I love your character in Guffman because he has an enthusiastic panic, is what I get from him the entire time. He seems slightly frantic the entire time.
Who does?
I think he's in love.
Oh, my character, yeah, well, it's kind of based on my dad. So it was kind of the life of the party and a lot of fun until nobody's around. So, yeah, that's...
So you're shooting film, you know, it's all discovery. What's your ratio, this is what, a 90-minute film just now?
Roughly 90 minutes.
So what's the ratio? How many
I
hours?
have about 60 hours. And I spent a year and a half, 8 hours a day with the editor.
At any point during that, do you think it's not here?
The first day.
The second day?
No, that was the great gift, to sit with this and never having seen any dailies, because we had an hour a day so I would sit with the editor and we would make notes, handwritten notes for months and months and months, and then begin to, and again, it's laid out. It's not as if this goes here and this goes here. It's delineated very much in the outline, but to actually take the time to be able to do it the way we wanted to was great.
You know, Michael, is this the same process did this feel like the same process for Spinal Tap? Or was it more advanced, like it had evolved?
Well, with Spinal Tap, there was a heavy-set bald man who was running things.
Oh, that's right.
And so we were the acting squad. But we had already, it is kind of a special case, we had all four sat with the notion and worked it one way or another for 3 years, practically, 1.5 years, yeah. So it was kind of a slightly different thing. Coming in and doing Best in Show, I mean, when Chris offered me Higgins' hand in marriage, I couldn't say no, obviously, and we started having fun from the first day, and then every other day. So it was a totally different situation.
I was concerned because, well, Michael's an idol of mine, and as Jake was saying, it's like I can't believe the sort of crazy bucket list that was happening in the room every day when I went to work. But I'm a little concerned because our characters, as we discussed with Chris and Gene, wanted slightly brighter colors emotionally, because there are so many issues. The other couples were in such distress. And so it would be nice if maybe different. And then I think, I can remember looking at Michael, it's like, as actors, you, especially in a comedy, you do not want to be happy people. Happy people are not funny. And people with problems, they're really funny. And so I think we kind of together made this thing where the guys were funny. You know, it's like, they're actually funny guys, you know, and that's where the laughs will come. And I think
couple in the movie.
you know, easily. Yeah, happy couple in the movie. And you guys end up fine. And you do too, actually. You're a couple. Your marriage turns out okay.
I think we're still happily married.
Are you?
Still have the braces on, though.
Yeah, we still have which, by the way, that all came about on our first meeting. We were having a meeting, and Christopher just goes, I think you are the type of people that have braces as adults. That wasn't in the outline. That just thought of that in our meeting.
And are those applications?
And then Parker got real ones because she was fixing a little bit of a tooth thing.
It was functional.
Yeah, and I had mine, they were done by the same orthodontist, but mine were on, and I still have them, they're in my bathroom drawer. And they were so hard to talk with, and so I had to keep them in all the time.
That's fantastic.
It was yeah.
Well, with that ratio of 60 hours to an hour and a half of runtime here, you had to kill a lot of babies, I imagine. Are there moments in this that it's just a literary?
There's another way of putting that.
strangle puppies? Were there things that you broke your heart that you couldn't include?
No.
Let's move on. Let's ask the cast. Were there moments that you missed that you thought were magical?
Because it's very clear, there's a story to tell, there's a lot of funny things. You need to tell this story, you need to service the story, they're going to be the funny things. So it was not hard for me to look at some people say, oh, I loved when in the editing room, you can't, it's just taking it away from the story, we'll get to that, so.
Right, that's the definition of killing your babies. I'm just curious.
So the answer
were there moments that the cast perhaps thought were good
They
enough
weren't
to be
allowed to
included?
vote on that. Except Fred would always say after every premiere of a film, what happened to the thing I did when I was walking down the hall? Hey Fred, you've been making movies for 50 years. You should know that things are edited. He didn't understand that was...
Is it true that Parker Posey's character throughout the film was originally smoking a lot of weed?
Yes, that's true. There were two scenes upstairs in the hotel room before the party. She was smoking some weed, and then there was a scene that got cut when we were at home, and she was smoking weed, and that was part of our dynamic with this. I didn't want her to be high when we went to the party, and so that was part of our underlying thing. But I think that got Christopher for rating purposes, right? I think it was it would have made it a PG-13 or something.
I don't remember.
I think.
Would you like a lawyer present before you answer that?
I'm wondering why I wore a tie. Why you wore a tie this? Okay, no, I don't normally wear a tie.
There we go, thank you. It's a real Tom Jones move there.
Speaking of, well, you remind me of saying Tom Jones was a singer. You're too young to...
He's still around.
We're shooting this film, and I hear singing, the most beautiful singing, and I thought, I wonder where that's coming from, and I went around a corner of the arena where the dog show was filmed. Jane, Mr. Higgins, and Catherine and Eugene were singing. Absolutely beautifully, they were singing Somebody Loves You, that song. Somebody Loves Me. And I thought, what the fuck? This is crazy, it's so good. And that put into my head the idea of using their musicianship and it's A Mighty Wind, because that then became, and John Michael Higgins arranged the vocals for that high level of musicianship, which also is about this movie too, because this kind of work is musicians playing with each other. You play together, if you're playing jazz, if you're playing a standard, you know it's in G or whatever key it's in, and you can state the theme of that, but then you go off and you come back to that. This is what this is. You know the story, you know it has to be told in every scene, but then you go off and you're playing with these great musicians.
So do you think of them as each individual,
not literal instruments, but musicians for sure, absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was hoping you would say Jane is an oboe or something.
No. But I can see that you're asking me to say, but you'd be a tuba? Is that what you're
Or euphonium.
Euphonium is better.
Euphonium, yeah. By the way, if anyone needs a busy bee, I have. Michael Hitchcock, I understand you had a very specific vision for how you wanted Hamilton Swan to look, and you were inspired at a TV star at the time.
Oh, wow, you did your homework. That's another cool thing about what Christopher does is that when we did our meetings, you get to meet all the different departments. And so Parker and I, because we're catalog people, we literally went to department stores that had catalog, like J. Crew and Banana Republic and all the, went to a mall in Los Angeles, and the wardrobe person followed us around, and we bought our clothing that we liked. And Parker's clothing, if you watch, is very pettable. She wanted to be very pettable. That's why she has all those soft things. And then I told the hair people that I think that Hamilton thinks that he looks like Matthew Perry. From Friends. And so they did my hair exactly like that, my parents' friends, including dyeing it, so.
Fantastic.
So,
Did you ever have a chance to tell Matthew that?
I did, yeah.
How did he take
And
it?
Sandy Bullock.
Very similar. Very similar.
Yeah, I did tell him that.
Christopher, I understand that there's a word, a portmanteau, associated with your films, a descriptive word of your films that you do not care for. Would you like to say the word, or do you need me to say the word?
Let's have Sandra say it. Is she
Sandy!
Yes.
Mockumentary.
Yes.
Why don't you like that term?
Well, I think it was a lazy way of describing this format. And when we first did This Is Spinal Tap, there's a whole other story behind that, but we realized we had to do it in that fashion. And I always called it like a documentary or a faux doc or something, but I didn't like the mock part of it because we're not really mocking anything. But I lost that battle long ago.
How do you care to describe your style of film?
Mockumentary.
When you lose a battle, man, you just lose it.
Thank you for doing this, by the way.
I mean, the opportunity to work with you guys is really an honor for me. Thank you very much. How did you decide what breeds and who got what breed of dog?
Well, we said, Eugene Levy and I, he couldn't be here because he's next door, actually, would match people to the dogs, you know, and we thought about that. We read hundreds of pages of dogs' books, and then we matched them to the dogs.
Do you guys remember like your relationship with your co-star, the dog? Any like, you know, Mike McKean? Any thoughts?
Yeah, several thoughts.
Pick one.
Okay. No, I don't know. I just, I didn't know any Shih Tzus at the time. It was a completely new thing to me, you know. So I was thrilled with how cool they were. They were really fun. I mean, they really are like really expensive wigs. And they're just fun. They'll let you go and pet me some more. They're just really sweet dogs. And they
They're
smell good.
wigs that poop.
That's right.
Our dog smelled like vomit. And I'm not kidding, it really did.
Is that a Weimaraner thing?
Yeah, the Weimaraner. I don't know why, it just did. Her name was Peaches. But they're not, I mean, they're not that friendly because they're tuned into the trainer.
Sure.
Yeah.
What about Rhapsody in White?
She was owned by a crazy person who had a tight poodle hair herself. She was a piece of work. I went to go bond with the dog, which is really not available for bonding because they're so trained and they kind of do look at the trainer. But I was like, oh, like you go up to a dog, she was like, and she came out with all of her awards and showed them to me. I won this, I won that. This isn't just any dog, and we ended up having to replace that dog.
She bailed out right before the
Final show.
The final show. She just left. The assistant director came to me and said, "The poodle lady." She just walked out. I said, "We're making a movie. We're making a movie where that dog is in the movie." She just left. So what happened? So it's a different dog.
Yeah, it's a different dog, and we got her from Seattle.
Quick
and-
haircut?
No, there are more than one of these, Stephen.
And this dog, because she did not have the haircut, they had to give her the haircut.
Thank you.
And they also they had to put makeup on her. They had to put makeup on this dog because
They put makeup
yeah,
on the
because
dog?
she was pink, and because if you have that haircut all the time, the skin turns brown. So for continuity, we had to paint that dog.
Wow. And
With lead paint.
And she wasn't that trained, and she tripped me in front of 300 people. And I'm surprised you didn't use that. I was going around the thing.
the owners, some of the owners thought this was a real dog show. Yes. So we had shot the scene where Eugene wins, and this woman came up just furious. What is the matter with you? My dog should have won that show. I said, this is a movie. This is a a story about, this is who wins in the story. And she just left. She walked off.
You should know also
Didn't get it.
one fun fact is when we were shooting the final competition, that it was the same week as a big dog show, and all the good dogs were gone. They were at the other show. They were not available, you know. And we had this sort of second tier dog show, and so there were issues.
Now, Michael Hitchcock, you actually competed at one point.
No,
This guy.
You John Michael Higgins.
I did, yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so I went to, just for research purposes, I went to a breed show in the Simi Valley, and it was for a Saluki. We had Sheets, it was a very different gig, but I went to this thing, and the Salukis are like the dogs on the Egyptian pyramids. They're like pointy and they're big, and I was really just interested in the people. It's like, maybe I could steal some ideas for how to be funny as one of these people, and we, Jane, me,
I wasn't there.
No, well,
I was
you were
meeting with
Catherine.
Sandy.
You were being Sandy, yeah, Catherine and Jean.
Yes.
The actors who actually had to run around the circuit with the dog had to be credible dog showers. We had one lesson, right? What was her name? Danny or something? Anyway.
Really knows that little.
Yeah, we have in Hills, where you live.
Triangle Park.
And
Of Coldwater.
so we had one like 2-hour crash course of like, stand on this side, don't touch the lead here, do this, do that. And we were sort of half paying attention. We were on the day, we'll figure it out. Anyway, I'm up in the Simi Valley. This woman comes up to me. I was chatting with her because I was trying to like steal her life and make fun of it.
From the mockumentary.
So stupid. And then and she's like, listen, Flash is on. She had a bunch of Salukis. She says, I need points, and Flash has got to go. His trainer's house. She said, can you just run him out there? And I'm like, because I was pretending I knew what I was belonging there, and I was like, and I look over her shoulder. My wife is on the other side. She's like, do it. And the choice was do it or say, I'm sorry, I've been trying to steal your terrible life. I said, okay. And I was like rifling through the file cabinet of these lessons that it was like 2 days earlier. I was like, what do and I just like, stand on this side, do this. It was very much like Gene in this movie. I was like, you know, and I did it, and she said, she'll be fine. You have a low voice and you're big. And I was like, okay. And then I did it, and I won.
Well, obviously, we couldn't have a panel on Best in Show without bringing out the true stars, the dogs. Please welcome David Fry from the National Dog Show and some canine co-stars. Come on out. Right here. Well, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking Christopher and the cast.
VHS, man, she's old school.